I was stung by rock and roll when I heard Elvis Presley on TV. And can remember Saturday, I was watching Elvis sing, and my brother was there, and we were sitting in the room, and my brother was a really good singer. And so Elvis was singing, and I was completely entranced, listening to him sing and watching him, and it captured my spirit. And I believe that in a way, maybe God was giving me a little tweak into what my gifting was and what he was calling me into, because I couldn't get away from that. I was actually really inspired to go to California to seek my fortune. And so I told my mom and dad I was going, and they were distraught, thinking that I was walking away from Christ and walking away from all of their guidance all those years. And my father said, well, I'm going to drive you to the bus terminal before you go. And he never said anything to me all the way into the bus terminal. And we drove, very quiet ride, about 25-minute ride. We got there, I went and got my ticket, put my luggage under the thing in the bus, and I was climbing onto the bus, and my dad said to me, son, and I turned around and I looked at him, he said, when your back's against the wall and you have nowhere to turn, call out on Jesus. And I looked down at my dad and I said, I don't need Jesus. And then I walked to the back of the bus, and then I started playing in different bands down there. But it wasn't satisfying for very long, because I got into speed and coke and, just whatever was going on, and I got caught up in the lifestyle. My heart was broken. All of a sudden, those words that my father spoke to me, when your back's against the wall and you have nowhere to turn, came up in my heart and in my spirit, and began to cry. And I said, Jesus, help me. And the phone rang. It was my father. I hadn't spoken to my father in 2.5 years. And at that moment, he called me when I cried out for Jesus. So I went home, and when I got home, I was looking for a place to go to church to seek God, because I had touched Jesus and I didn't know what was next. I remember going and falling in love with Jesus, and then the pastor said to me, you know that you have to give up your Mohawk heritage in order to have Jesus. He said, because your Mohawk heritage is heathen, and if you want to have Jesus, you want to be in the culture of Jesus, he said, you have to give it up. And I was stunned and devastated and kind of heartbroken, because my dad brought me up to be proud to be Mohawk. And to think that I had to give up my birthright, I had to give up who God created me to be, wasn't very nice. And so I've got 2 mandates to help the non-Native people to be able to find the liberty that's going to come when they're forgiven by their Aboriginal, their Indigenous people, and for our people to discover the gifts that God has placed in them and be able to experience those gifts and carry them to the world with love.